All right, buddy, let's just do a podcast.
Let's do it. It's February 10th, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We are episode 555.
There's a lot of fives there. Who's your...
A lot of fives. Not my high school number was 55 double nickel. This is the triple nickel.
Oh, really? I was going to ask you. So that's
Triple
your favorite
Nick.
five athlete of all time? Is yourself?
Is me? No. Hayden did draw me. I got back down from run camp. He said he made me two cards. One was he and I hiking, and the other one was me playing high school football with my number 55. And luckily, our team was winning 99-3.
1993.
We were. I mean, to be fair, we were quite dominant until we choked in the state championship game. But that's neither here nor there.
He didn't draw you in the NFL?
He did not draw me in the NFL. We had that conversation one of our Hayden hot takes a few weeks ago that I was never in the NFL, and he made that very clear.
Why not?
And for those of you, I mean, look at me. I don't have enough.
I'm sure that's what he asked.
Yes.
How come?
How come? He is, however, pulling for the Bengals.
Good for him.
He
man.
is. He's an underdog guy, which I've kind of instilled in his. I said we like the underdog. Because frankly, I'm a Tennessee Vols fan and a Dolphins fan, and we are perennial underdogs all the time. So it's kind of in our blood.
A long time. He never used to be.
I know, never used to be. So, but that's what it is. So he's cheering for the. He's cheering for the Bengals. I know you are too, because you can't stand the city of Los Angeles. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No,
I
it's
threw
true,
you under the bus on that one.
I don't care.
But no,
I used to love LA, but now it's like dumb.
He's going to be cheering for the Bengals. So I hope you all have a great Super Bowl Sunday. It's your first time tuning in. Welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. You know, you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. We appreciate your time and we value it. We know you. A lot of you have been around the block with us for a long, long time. So we appreciate you. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We will do race recaps. We'll do race previews. Having the occasional guest, but for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through. We'll also talk about what our athletes are going through. We work with a wide range of athletes, from beginner level athletes to elite level amateurs trying to get back to Kona, that are all over the world, and then everyone in between. We'll kind of use the feedback we get from them and training peaks, emails, texts, phone calls to drive the topic of the day. And we'll also go into our Facebook group, which you can search on Facebook, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, and we'll let you right in. We'll be using them today, actually, to kind of catapult the discussion. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads. We do have an agenda, though, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to think of a number 5 that you like in sports. I think mine's Johnny Bench.
I don't even
right
know
off the top.
I mean, it's going to sound really cocky and egomaniac, but I mean, it's me. I don't know any other 55.
Double nickel.
I don't know any other 55s.
Good hit, double nickel. Good stick, man.
Good stick, double nickel.
Laid them out, man. Double nickels on the blitz.
On the blitz. Oh yeah, 20-something years ago. So we hopped into our Facebook group, and
Wait a minute. Paul Molitor, was he 5?
Paul, that's your. He's a Brewer guy, right?
Oh my God,
Twins,
best hitter of all time.
Oh boy, here we go.
Hey, you could extrapolate out the stats and.
Let me I'll go ahead and hop into our Facebook group and get to these questions before you start researching Paul Molitor.
I can't remember. I feel like it was 4.
But we will we'll occasionally go in and do just kind of general Q&As. But today I thought it would be a good topic to talk about frustrations. And so I dropped in there right before we started.
Man after my heart.
Yeah, that's right. I know, right? I felt your vibe this morning. I was like, no, we're going with this one, frustration. So I said, my biggest frustration in training and racing is blank. And this must have hit a nerve, because we got about 30 responses in about, 20 minutes. And a lot of them are really, really good. And I know that, a lot of times, and this is true for most, I can think, triathlon podcasts, probably outside of ours, that focus on the technical aspects and, power meters and data and interviewing pro athletes and race course previews all the time and stuff. But it's, triathlon, training, data, numbers, polarized, this and hit that and FTP builder this. And we do some of that sometimes, but we as I think the most fun we have with our podcast, and I think why a lot of you choose to listen to us when you have plenty of other options, is that we love trying to help you figure out the nuances of integrating triathlon into life and vice versa. Because, and we've talked about this a lot of times, and I mentioned this probably every quarter or at least twice a year, and remind our athletes that, writing the training plan for the week, and making adjustments and looking at numbers and progression, how you're going to kind of map out the year, is really only like 10 to max 20% of our job. The rest of it is soft skills. It's listening. It's helping you get out of your own way. It's kind of, making a path that works best for you. It's listening. It's, understanding your life and how you manage stress. It's the soft skills, which also makes the job, I think, a lot harder than people would probably, imagine. Like I was on a Zoom call with a new athlete last night, and he was asking me kind of about general approach, and said, listen, I said, Training Peaks is like a confessional. Okay. We're definitely, you and I are the farthest thing from priests, but that is a place where people will confess and be vulnerable and open up to things that they don't put anywhere else, right? It's not the Facebook feed of your best dinner, or the best, hike you did with the perfect sunset. It's just life. And it's a reminder for you and I all the time about how hard life is, but how also important our job is as a coach to kind of help you, navigate that with training. And some of the first few topics on here were that, like the first one is not that, from Jerry Clay. She said, well, my coach gives me the pulling work in the pool. Well, get over it, Jerry. We got some more strength to do. She doesn't like doing the pull buoy work. The second one from Dave Cravata, this is an excellent one. And he said, the guilt I feel for missing out on life or a workout. Listen, I think guilt / however heavy you want to make it, shame around missing out on life because you're doing a workout, or doing a workout and missing out on life, is probably one of the most under talked about topics in triathlon, because of how triathletes are wired. We are perfectionists. We like to make everyone happy. We like to do everything we can. We like to, check all the boxes. We have our to-do list. We have everything mapped out. And when we feel like we are disappointing our family, our spouse, kids, our coach, the training plan, our goals, we get very, 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 not just frustrated, but we get very hard on ourselves, right? I feel like I can't do anything right, or I can't do it all. Well, listen, guys, like you can't, that's the truth. You can't do it all, right? And I think that's where you have to kind of, and I was explaining this to the same athlete I talked to last night. I said, honestly, one of the biggest roles of a coach is to remove that responsibility to put the shame and guilt on yourselves by letting the coach take it for you, right? So you see an athlete that's, asking a question like, I've got my daughter's recital, tonight, and I've got this workout I want to do, and we're so close to race day. So for them, they're feeling this kind of tug of war between the shame and guilt of being a parent and being there and being present and doing the things you're supposed to do. And then they're also feeling the pull of, well, I'm a triathlete, I got this thing, I've got these, goals. I don't want to resent either. I don't want to resent the race I'm doing or, family time. So as a coach, what your job is to do is to shoulder that kind of shame and guilt, because you don't feel it because it's theirs, right? But your job as a coach is to say, you know what, dude, take the day off, go to the recital. And you can almost hear, I know you felt this too, you can almost like hear the exhale through a text message when you're like, dude, just don't. They're like, thank you. Like oftentimes they'll say, thank you. I thought that was it. I just need to hear it. And what you do is you kind of free them to live their life without that extra burden of the stress we put on ourselves. And I really do. I believe it's one of the very first guests we ever had on was Steve Magnus. And he said, one of the best things about that athletes say when they, go through a race and have a great race or a poor race is that they have someone else to troubleshoot it with, right? That it's not all their fault, or it's not all their success. They have someone else to kind of help shoulder the blame, if you will, or to, kind of take part in the success. And that is just one of those very underrated aspects of having, I think, a coach or a very supportive partner that's, like you, and I think you can do that too in the middle, because I had a conversation at this off season with an athlete who was kind of talking about doing a 70.3 this year. And he'd already signed up for like 2 years ago. It had been canceled. And he said, so I'm kind of thinking about what you want to do. And I said, don't do it. Just do not start. Just the money's gone. Do something different. And he was like, that's really not how I thought this conversation was going to go. And I was like, listen, man, I was like, every weekend for the last 8 weeks, you've said, I either went on my long ride and I felt guilty the whole time and stressed because I knew my wife wanted to spend more time with me. And so I didn't enjoy it and was miserable. Then the next week you'll skip your ride and you'll comment, I can't believe I missed that. I'm never going to achieve anything, so it's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And so I said, well, what if we just remove the damn part and just remove that aspect of it, right? Make a choice, stay on the weekends and just get your long run in before she wakes up and you get your whole weekend back, right? It might not be that one day 70.3 but that you had planned on, but we can still have fun and get better and get fit. The job, and you touched on this on Tuesday's podcast, was like, the job is to remove stress, right? To not keep adding so much stress and quote unquote responsibility to our life to we have this 24-hour feeling of we're drowning. We can't do it all. We can't be good enough at it. And, we're never going to do it right.
I got a lot on this one.
I know I need to shut up on that one. I was just on a roll.
No, that's fine, dude. I like to think about these kind of things and what's the goal, right? Like, you're doing we talk about Ironman full a lot, probably more in a weighted sense, maybe half the time, just because that's, it seems like the biggest draw and a lot of people, it's the hardest and whatever. But no matter what the race is like, I always think about how did you do what you thought you were going to do? Like how rare that is, like how many people actually go out and nail an Ironman. I mean, how rare, think about that. And most people are, depending on their goals, a little bit disappointed, I think, with their performance. I know I'm making a blanket statement, but I just pay attention and I think, I could have done this and this and that. I don't necessarily know, how many people can actually get to podium level. I know we have that, we have a wide range of people that listen to this podcast. A lot of people want to finish an Ironman. And then once you get to the point where you're like, man, I'm pretty sure I can finish it. Now I want to do sub 15 or now I want to do sub 14. And then you start going, what's the difference really? This year I did Chad here and I was disappointed in my outcome, but in reflection, I'm a little bit more disappointed that I didn't just actually enjoy the day more, and go through the process and feel good about it or whatever, and I don't necessarily think that, certain people get so caught up in not missing anything. And I just don't think it matters, I do think back to when I was working with you, the first thought I had actually, when you read that was, back to my first Ironman. Cause you don't have any idea, right? You just think that you have to do everything. You're never going to finish this race. Cause there's always that mystery. And I remember one specific day, and I think I've talked about it years ago on this podcast, but I'm going to guess it.
Yeah. July 4th.
Yeah.
Garage trainer ride.
And how it was this long trainer ride. And then I had a big run after it or something. And, for whatever reason, it was a big day, 6-hour day or something like that. It was probably like a brick, short brick.
Short brick for sure.
Who knows what I was thinking back then. But anyway, I passed on Hot Chicken Festival with all the guys that I was training with. And I was just, to this day, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Cause I had such emotion in that day. I started crying because I was it was raining. I'm looking outside. It's like a muddy day. And I kept getting texts from these guys and pictures and everything like that. And I missed out on, I don't know if that was a better experience to go to or not. In the time we were just kind of in that flow with hey, let's go to Hot Chicken Festival. We'll train tomorrow or whatever. And I had tremendous guilt about that, but I also had a tremendous amount of pride in doing a very hard workout. And I think it did matter. I don't know. It was a key weekend. So I think it did definitely matter and kind of, cause I was new and got me over the hump, but it's such a powerful topic. I think the guilt factor of, moving along, but it's just we get so trapped in this idea that today is the race, and we want to make sure that we do everything perfectly today when it's what is perfect? Today is doing what feels good and, you know, hopefully moves your needle forward or helps you recover. So there's always these two, you know, dualities that go on during every training day. And, you know, when you're 4 months away from training, it's like, just do something fun, man. You know, that's kind of where I'm at.
Man,
if you don't feel like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and apologies to everyone else who commented on this thread. We'll probably get to the rest of it on Monday, but yeah, because it is I think it's such an important but like heavy layered topic, right? Is the amount of, and because what happens, I think, is we get very wrapped up in the decisions that were made by a person that we're not anymore, to do something that really isn't as feasible as we once thought it was. But we still chain ourselves to that responsibility like it's something like we have to do or we're going to die, right? Like, and then if we don't do, we're not good enough, or we've wasted time or we've wasted ability, you know, and what's going to be like, wait, stop. Like, do you think, you know, people who play, you know, darts for a living think like this? Like, well, you know, I've really wasted my craft of, you know, darting or whatever you call it. It's like, no, it's like, we're just in athletes, especially triathletes. We are obsessed with being too hard on ourselves. And I honestly think most of it is, you can go back to like psychoanalyzing your child, is from, you know, parents, family upbringing. You're just used to that's where you feel most comfortable, is being really, really hard on yourselves. And like, you know, I've been having this like internal struggle myself recently about like, you know, Hayden in the certain age he's at, and we're starting to do a bunch of stuff together. And when I think about like, you know, racing, you know, and doing things, I want him to be there. I want him to be around, and you know, if I do another, you know, 70.3 or I do another Ironman, like I want him to be there. He hasn't been to one in like 3 years. Last one was here in Chattanooga, and he doesn't remember because he was so young. But now that he like, you know, knows what, you know, it is, very much so, and like knows what we do and like all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, like I really want him to be there and do this, you know. But then I think, well, that's just one day, right? It's just one day that he gets to watch, and it could be, you know, ego or what I feel like I need to get back in return for like time I've missed out previously, you know, kind of weighing all his options. And then the other day I was like, well, that's just one day. But if you're training for a full and it's going to be all these hours, you might not be there to do fun things with him, then where does that leave you? Then where's the net positive, right? Just, you're going to get the one day where he's going to be like, great, saw you run around in spandex and give you a high five. And after that, he's going to want to go eat ice cream and, you know, chill out for the rest of the day, see you finish, and be like, what'd you do again? How many miles? He's not going to give a shit. He's not going to have any idea. It would matter to me. But the point for me is like, I want it to be better for our relationship as father and son, and for him. But then so then I rewind and think, okay, well, if I'm going to do this big day and I want to perform the way I like to perform, I'm going to need to put in some heavy hours. And what's that going to mean? Probably hours away from doing things, you know, with him. And so I think it's, you know, so what if I scale back and don't do that? You know, so there's just this fine line, I think, in tug of war we all have between what is right and what feels wrong. And I think the answer for most of the time is there's not really a wrong, right? One just feels less right than the other. And that might change day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, what feels right and then what feels less right. And I think like removing the wrong word or things like that is like, oftentimes it's just not wrong. It's just, it was the choice, the next right choice you made wasn't the one you wanted, but it was still right? You still made the right decision to not do something and do something else, but also being really, really confident and concrete in your belief that what I'm choosing to do right now is the right decision. And if it is, then why am I worried about what I'm not doing? Right? Mm-hmm. Because if that's the kind of give and take and back and forth you're having, then maybe you're confused on what matters the most. But I think just letting go, and again, not acting like or believing like we have that much control, right, over the things that we do or don't do and how things end up, because you're going to be a different person on race day than you were when you signed up in the first place. A lot of people are like 2 years behind on racing, and life is different, and you have different, I know a lot of athletes have had different, you know, life trajectory the last 2 or 3 years. Their belief system is different. Their values have been, you know, reworked. That's good, right? Triathlon is supposed to fit into your life, not the values in your life fit into triathlon. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that you have to be happy and confident that you're making the right calls. And sometimes it might not feel like the right calls, and then just move on the next day and try to make the next right call. And the right call you might make on a Thursday might be totally opposite from the right call you made on Monday. Doesn't mean it's the wrong call. It just means it was the right call for a different day in a different circumstance, that a different person was dealing with it, that had more things to, kind of go through and filter before they made this decision.
Mm-hmm. How do you make yourself whole, right? I remember when I started, even before, it was an Olympic in Nashville, or maybe it was a sprint, the first sprint I ever did. It was, because I had started running, and then I got into the triathlon. I did a sprint, and I remember feeling so much better. Running was the catalyst to get me back in shape when I was approaching 50, and then triathlon was like a breath of fresh air, because running was killing me, and I knew that wasn't sustainable. And I took sort of a picture at the finish line, and my buddy texted, and he's like, "Man, you look so happy, man." And I had spent, years working in news, and I was really kind of pouring my energy into more of like art and creative ventures or whatever it would, but like some dark places kind of thing. And it was sort of rekindled the flame for the athlete that I grew up as. And it was sort of like, wow, here's the, this collision of, it's sort of this new spark in my life. I was like, hey man, this is part of you. Right. And now, and then I kind of went the other way and all in on triathlon, and, hanging up triathlon posters in my bedroom, like blacklight triathlon posters, and, just really diving in. And then of course we've done this, and it's all, a lot about it is. So it's, this idea of, and people question balance or whatever, but like just finding that sweet spot of who you are and everything like that. I mean, and because in the beginning it was all about, me, I was all about podium, Kona, and all that kind of stuff. And then it was just sort of like unbalancing me the other way. And, I realized that, I may not be the perfect build or history for something like that, but like I can do well. And I don't, a lot of times sometimes I would train really well for a race and not do that great, and vice versa. So it's all this mystery of like feeling, like I said, whole with yourself and in comfort with what you're doing, and taking away that sort of low level stress that can pull you in different directions, and just being, it's sort of that analogy of just going with the river instead of trying to swim against it all the time. And I think a lot of times we do that, because how many times you see comments, it's like, man, I was just so wiped today, but I sucked it up and I went out and I did my run, and then 2 days later, it's sort of like, man, I'm feeling sick or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, I just, we talk about consistency, and I think it's important, very important, but also consistency with your health. What makes you feel good and what gives you the energy to keep going. It's not about consistently, you can be consistent with bad habits, and that could be overtraining or beating your, like if you're going through your whole triathlon cycle into your race, wiped out every Sunday night, and then going, oh my God, I can't believe I got a big week ahead or whatever. I know a lot of people don't do that either, but it's very common, I think, that we get sort of behind an 8 ball and can never get out until race day. And then it's just like, thank God that's over. That's not like, is that the cycle we want to get in?
But most athletes find themselves doing things within a cycle. Like, and that's like, I think part of and there's various types of cycles. And I think like, as much as athletes try to obsess and pay attention to their physical health / fitness, most of them totally neglect mental and emotional health, right? And what's needed and what they need to feel mentally and emotionally healthy. And because been there, way been there. Like before I got sober, that was me. I was I was the driver. I'm going to neglect. I'm going to pretend. I'm going to be, I'm going to hide and just, be in total denial of all these mental and all the mental and emotional turmoil that I had. I mean, I had more guilt and shame then than at any point in my life ever. And I dove myself into training. I mean, I dug in deep. I would put myself through pain and through misery. I'd crank up expectations. I'd create, rivalries in my head with people, to kind of like, because what it was it wasn't work. It was physical distraction and things that we can do and obsess about that don't allow us time to sit and think and have introspection of, all right, well, what really is the fuck wrong with me? Right? Because I'm literally out riding 4 and 5 hours and 6 hours on the trace by myself. I'm running long, I'm swimming, you might, this guy's really motivated, right? And really, he's got his going on. He's really going to do well. I was killing myself, right? I was just like the physical output people saw was a direct reflection of the turmoil that I had inside and what I was trying to deal with and quote unquote deal with, right? So trying to cover up with a different kind of pain. And I think athletes do that, maybe not to the extent that I had in terms of, what I was going through in that period of time and the feelings and emotions and being so hard on myself and just generally miserable with every part of life. People still do that. Maybe not to the degree that I was doing it then. Some maybe as much as, and some maybe more. But we use like these metrics and these small things we get addicted to and obsess about, really just to distract ourselves, right? And then if you're feeling shame and guilt about missing a workout, it's not about the workout. Never is. Mm-hmm. It's about something else in your life. You're feeling insecure. You're feeling, you're not feeling confident. You're feeling incapable. You're not feeling good enough about other things, right? Or you've been wired in a way that is you just don't feel like you're good enough, right? So when you miss out on something, you're not reaffirming what you believe. Really, what you're doing is you're reaffirming and kind of giving a high five, in your opinion, in your view, giving a high five to the people that helped, raise you or breed you into a way that was a person who just didn't think very highly of themselves. So you're kind of affirming what other people's beliefs instilled in you that now you are just kind of like letting happen and becoming, that are affirming your belief. That is why people feel, I think, an enormous amount of guilt and shame, when it comes to missing out on this or missing out on that. It's because it's not about the training, right? Most of the stuff we do is not about the training. It's about how we're managing and dealing with life, the expectations that we set. A lot of times when people come to me and they're like, hey, I want to do this, and they reach for the stars. My first thought is, how far deep are you? Because what happens usually is, and this isn't always the case, but a lot of times it's, when people shoot for the stars, it's because they're buried 500 miles under the ground, and they are trying to reach as far as they feel like they need to bring themselves up, not to the stars, but just a fucking middle ground, right? To feel like feel like we always overcompensate, like we always kind of backhanded joke, but it's true because I used to do it for sure. It was like anytime I see somebody who like goes on a streak of like motivational quotes or this, and like, things aren't going well. I know, and I say that in all honesty because that was me. Yep. When the worst part of my life ever, that was me. I was motivational. The world is great and dandy. You can do anything, and here I am like dying and not being able to take care of myself as a 30-year-old man. So I know it, but that's the thing is like we always go the other end of the spectrum, right? I missed yesterday. So I'm going to do double today, right? Like that's the answer, is to kind of, we always double down on everything in life. And I think it's become such a symptom of society and everything with business and relationships. And for us with training, it's all about doubling down and quadrupling things and going longer and doing this. And listen, the longer you should be obsessed about is the life that you live. Right? The relationships that you have, the how your kids, how your friends, how your spouse, how your business partners are, like, that's the thing you should really give a shit about and doubling down on and going longer with. Like, you want to be around for a long period of time. You want to, when I get real hard on myself about stuff or I feel like I need to be doing more, the one thing that always kind of gets me moving is you want to be around you want to be around as long as possible while Hayden's alive. And be around as long as possible. You want to be the healthiest, fittest, best version of yourself you can possibly be for as long as possible. And if that doesn't get you out the door, I don't know what is, what will. But those are like the core things that I think really move people. in a genuine type of way that's not held on to some expectation or a belief system that they had growing up. And it's confidence. It's being your own worst critic and your own enemy. When, as we said before, like we should be our biggest supporters, right? We should love ourselves the most, right? And we should be our biggest fan, but so many people, and then obviously our audience is mostly triathletes, is that triathletes are 100%. I've never seen, and I've coached tennis, I work with swimmers, like triathletes are the hardest on themselves of any like populate. And I'm sure they're, it's across all sports, but they're just incredibly hard on themselves.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, I think, comes from the fact that I don't think I'm alone in this respect, that a lot of people get into this sport because they need to change something in themselves, and they feel like, hey, I got to do something different with my life, or there's problems in the past that we're running from and things like that. And I think about it in terms of like stimulation, and like you're talking about, like sometimes you come from your childhood and things are different, or like you feel that like pressure to show out or show people that you matter, or whatever the case may be. And I was actually talking to Mark at lunch. He came in for a hub visit yesterday, and about how kind of strange it is that, the people that create the greatest things in our world, like the Michael Jordans, the Michael Jackson, these people, like what drives them to that level, or any really pro athlete, I can imagine, there's got to be dozens of times they don't feel like playing tonight or whatever it is. And how do they get, but then, you think about like, then all of a sudden you go out and there's 20, 30,000 people out there, and how that would juice you up. And people really care, and you're constantly in this sort of like stimulated environment. I think we have the same things, but we have no crowd.
That's
It's like nobody cares about our individual journeys.
I mean, we
really
do. We have all 8 of you listening right now. You are our crowd.
But like, I think that, and in some ways it's like, that's what keeps us going, sitting down in these chairs, because we know people are listening. But then it turns into like, couch talk with us.
Right.
So, I'm thinking back to your desires to just burn yourself all over the time. I was thinking back, but we both could have opened a cafe called Burt Biscuits. But we used to, I was like, you only have so many, so much energy, man. And it's like, I think that external fuel, like I was saying, from crowds and audience. And I was telling Mark too, that I depend, like I literally factor in the crowd factor, 25%. Because it does matter to me for whatever reason. It gives me another bit of like, I think it is. It's like I dig deep. I'm going to show everybody that I belong here. It's sort of this weird thing. But like, I know there's a lot of healthy, balanced people out in this sport too. And they just kind of go through their thing, and they don't really put too much stock in anything one way or the other. And they're more probably relaxed about it. And then it's funny because you train so hard, and we used to create more and more competition back then. Remember the guys we were training with would always get like, I just always got to be about a competition, it was, and we really did. And upon reflection, I'm probably like, it was a little heavy sometimes, but it was sort of the new thing and the new factor. But the longer you stay in it, then you realize it's like, you could train your ass off and to go against somebody that you want to compete against and do like a 70.3 or whatever, and be like within 5 minutes or 10 minutes and be bummed out like you didn't, really train good enough or whatever. It's like 5 minutes, man. It's like, who even remembers? I know a lot of people who turn that 5 minutes into a victory that they lost by, but then over time it'd be like, remember, I beat you.
By 20 minutes. No, you didn't. You lost by 30.
But seriously, it's just like 5-10 minutes here or there. It's just weird that we get consumed by such things like that.
I think in going back to like the amount of comparison people do, between this person and that, and you see results here, and like, listen, like, and you and I are reminded this basically every day we open up Training Peaks, is that you're all dealing with something different, right? And you might see, and I think, and one of the reasons why I know that I feel personally like I'm, a better coach in certain aspects of the way I coach is because I've fucking been there. Right. And like when people open up and are vulnerable, and I'm like, listen, like this is what you do and I can tell you this because I've been on your side, right? I've been on your side. I'm out on the other side. I'm still trying to figure things out, but you can also see people who, you talked about like, the best athletes in the world, And for every like 5 of those, there's 500 that were probably more athletic, but didn't have the love and didn't want it, right? They were the high school superstar and the college Heisman winner, and then 2 years in the pros. They suck, right? They lost it. They weren't there. It wasn't they weren't there for the right reasons, but there's other stuff going on, right? There's also going on upstairs where they don't have the drive or the work ethic to like, to me, it's rarely the ones who play the longest. It's rarely all, about how athletic they always are. It's about how long they're willing to keep working at their craft to stay at a certain level because they love what they do. And so when you look and you compare and you think about other athletes that you see, on Facebook or Instagram or Strava or whatever it is, it's like, you might be comparing yourself to somebody who's, you're on one side of the coin and you're still dealing with things in life. You get all these variables and obstacles that do impede progress, right? It's stress is stress and the things we go through and the stories we tell ourselves, you lack confidence and you can't find a way to push yourself hard enough because you're afraid you'll blow up. And if you blow up, then you'll prove other people right because they thought you wouldn't amount to anything and you are slow and you can't do this. So you don't do things like, and there's other people who have never been on a side. They just had it cool, crisp, and easy, right? Like they, quote unquote easy. A really, really bad day for them is when, they mess up their, Starbucks order in the drive-thru and they get, a full whip instead of no foam. Like that. For some people, that's their bad day. For a lot of people, that's like a dream day. You're like, wait a minute, they get to get drive-thru Starbucks. Like I can't leave my house, or I have all these things to do. Like I don't even have time to do that. We compare ourselves but I think that's why you have to worry more about getting to the other side than anything else, than staying on the side that you're on. And if you're on a side where you're feeling guilty and ashamed and you're beating yourself up and you lack confidence, then what you're doing is you're digging in your heels to the wrong side, right? That the best thing you can do is to feel supported, to choose to love yourself, to, allow yourself opportunities to show that you're making progress and to feel supported and to get to the other side and help, remove that shame and give yourself a pass, right? And like, it doesn't make yourself lazy. And there's so many times when athletes say like, I guess I wasn't motivated or committed. I'm like, so we just shut the fuck up. Like, it's not about not being motivated. It's about being an adult, right? You made decisions where adults have to make, where you couldn't work out today because you had to go pick up your kid sick from school, and then you got home and you had 2 more hours of your actual job you had to do. So, God forbid you didn't hop on the treadmill at 9:30 at night when everyone else is sleeping to get your run in just because, right? Go to bed, right? Go to bed and wake up the next day a more refreshed adult and be okay with it. But the level of not okay that most athletes have is unreal, right? And that's like, people think when you get a coach, I don't really want to be told what to do. And I don't want someone to push me and be hard on me. I'm like, that's not what coaches do. Coaches tell you to do less, right? They get you out of your own way. They tell you to take days off, and they tell you to effing relax, right? And to chill out, and that what you're obsessing about, guess what? It's not that big of a deal, right? It is too. And that's the opposite, I think, of what people imagine coaches being, because people at that level think that everyone is at that level too. It's about this, it's about that. I'm like, it's about just it's about having fun. And that's what opens the door to being consistent, right? The people who are the most consistent, the most successful, either are having a lot of fun doing what they're doing, or they know that everything they do isn't weighted so heavily that it's going to be a massive success or a massive failure. It's just going to kind of be what it is. So if you stop grading yourself on this massive scale of importance, then missing something now becomes not that big of a deal, right? And it's that grand scale that I think we've all started to kind of adopt in life and in training. That's really putting perspective way out of whack.
Yeah. When I first started training triathlon, there was times back in the day when I used to mountain bike, and I just would ride a lot. I'd go out and I'd ride hard, and I'd figure things out on my own or whatever. And it was never any kind of real structure other than I would just go out and say, hey, I'm going for an hour and a half or hour, whatever it is. And I would ride hard and everything. And I did out of nowhere, I just did that 40-mile Fat Tire Festival up in northern Wisconsin one time. And I ended up getting like 1,000th out of 2,000. And I don't think I had any nutrition or any water. I don't even know if I had water, to be honest. I mean, I probably had a bottle, but it was so unprepared. But then as I started training for triathlon, what I started to do was see patterns, right? Like things like intervals and tempo rides and like understanding the importance of that kind of thing. And over time, I've talked about it a lot of times is like, you know, in racing, for example, I think patience and pacing are like the hugest things. And it's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to kind of understand that. So like if you have a certain workout on the week or whatever, and it takes a little time to sort of grasp what that feels like, and then be okay with the idea of toying around in that space and just to learn it on your own level. Like if I give you, 20 minutes tempo zone 3 or whatever, that you may not nail it for a while is what I'm getting at. So I think that's important as far as going out and riding. We used to just ride bikes and be in good shape and feel good because we would do things, and sometimes that would be hard out there and you'd hit hills or whatever like that. So I don't know, man. I just think like, and there's always these reminders. I feel like, like I have, and it's interesting because I'm kind of the guy that you refer to sometimes that has a lot of free time or like doesn't have a lot of responsibilities, and I live above a training center, and it's sort of like, boy, you should just be podiums left and right because you've got the time. But sometimes there's other things that get in the way, and it's usually my head, but there's things that I want to figure out, or things that I want to do. And I don't know about you, like at camp, I always sleep much better out there. I don't know if you go through that as well, but my theory on that is that when I get back home, I'm sort of like there's shit around that hasn't either been addressed or taken care of, or that I need to do. And it's kind of winding in my head. And when we go to camp, usually by day 3, I'm just like, I forget about everything. And I'm just like in a quiet cabin in the middle of nowhere, just sleeping. And how important those kind of things are, because it really boils down to just being comfortable in your skin and not having your head like overtake your thought pattern, and having that kind of wired all the time, whether it's like sort of that coffee feeling, if you have too much, that anxiety that's just sort of like buzzing up in your head. It's like, you don't even know what you're thinking about. You're just feeling like you got other shit that you should be doing. Right. And I think that's why I always like to pull back, because I feel like a lot of things in life are so cliche. It's like, do this, do that, do that. And like everybody knows kind of what to do. But I think ultimately you just need to be at peace and calm and not stressed about missing a workout or whatever it may be. And it's the hardest thing to do, but it's almost like instead of doing all these other things, you need to do things to get inside yourself and just be cool with that.
Being cool with who you are and what you love and the life that you have is something that most athletes greatly struggle with. Like especially you have athletes that are super driven and motivated and want to, you always hear, I want to get the most out of my body. I want to reach my athletic potential. Well, we can do that. But what you also have to understand and accept, and acceptance is a very, very hard thing for athletes to wrap their brain around, is that you need to reframe your sentence. For most people, it needs to be, I want to be the most athletic and reach my best performance ever as a triathlete who is also a mother, a professional that has 4 kids and enormous responsibility and is taking care of my sick grandma and this. Add that in, right? But most people don't. It's like, I want to reach my athletic potential as if you are a single, jobless, wealthy person living in your own triathlon resort with an amount of time and no stress and no responsibilities.
And masseuses and...
Yeah, that's the way triathletes think, right? It's like, I haven't reached... You are not a triathlete first, okay? You're a parent, you're a spouse, you are a friend, you are all kinds of things. Triathlon is way, way down the list, okay? take all those things into factor and be okay with it. Because what you need to ask yourself, and every professional athlete would ever tell you this, if you want to be your best, tell me what you're willing to sacrifice. Time with your kids, time with your spouse, taking, to working a part-time job, scraping by because you work more hours and you're trying to do this. Like, you tell me what you're willing to give up to get there, not just give up as in like, well, I'll save on money. I guess I'll have only one Starbucks a week. And no, you're talking about missing time with your kids, right? You're talking about neglecting things you don't want to neglect. You're talking about not being as good of a professional as you might be. To get the absolute most out of it, that's what you have to do. And you don't want to do that, right? You're happy with, hopefully, with the life that you have and the other things, like, because if you weren't, you would have made that decision a long time ago, right? But I think what happens is when you hear athletes say that, they're like, all right, what else are you not feeling good about in your life, right? Why do you need such a pick me up? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be your best, right? To wanting to absolutely be the 100% best. And, I think that's just one of those things where you have to like add those little layers of conversation in, like, but you also want to be the best parent, right? And all these other things. So what allows you to do that? It's being the best of where you are and who you are as a person that does triathlon, not getting unfairly wrapped in the obsession of extracting every ounce of sweat and blood and tears to make myself the best triathloner on the planet. And you're like, okay, well, first off, this is a hobby, okay? Whereas this is the equivalent of collecting coins and having a stamp collection for most people. We do this shit for fun. And guess what? We pay for it, okay? So think about that and think about what are you going to be left with? Like kind of going back to, I want to, do these things and I want Hayden to be there. I'm like, well, Hayden to be there on that one day, specific day. What about the other 360 plus days of the year? Where am I going to be? Who am I going to be? What am I going to be doing? Mm-hmm. What's most important, right? And so there's always that tug of war. So I think it's just important to reframe. You think about extracting the best. You're born, you live, you become who you are. You're not given an infinite amount of time and energy. You allocate it out to all these other things in life that are important. So if you're that person saying, I want to get every ounce and everything out of my life that, out of my triathlon ability, then you need to look in the mirror and say, all right, all these other things I give energy to, I'm willing to take some of my energy and time away from that and allocate it to here. What you also have to tell yourself is, and then I also recognize that I don't know that I have control over that either because things got to be done, right? Like things have to be like, that's just one of those things where you do your best. You do your best. That's like when it's so daunting when athletes come like, hey, I really want to qualify for Kona. I want to do this. I want to do that. And this is, how I want to get there. And you're like, listen, like we can do all these things, but there are so many uncontrollables. All we can do is set yourself up for success the best, right? And this last year was the best year we've ever had in terms of the amount of people we sent to Kona. And it wasn't because we did anything different. We did anything extravagant. We didn't have some like secret sauce. It was just people worked hard and things lined up and that's how it rolls, right? And that's just one of those things where you got to be grateful and you got to be thankful that it did. But also understand that getting to Kona is, in my opinion, easier than getting back to Kona, because getting to Kona, you have to be fit and fast and ready and also a little bit lucky, right? To who shows up that day. To get back to Kona, you have to have all that happen again, right? Or you have to be at the tip, top. But still, it's still not a guarantee. And that's because it is. It's about so many other outside circumstances and variables. You could have a flat tire on your best day of your life and lost 5 minutes and it's gone, right? Doesn't mean you weren't the fittest version. There's just so many things at play. That's why, again, being so hard on yourselves and setting up these things is just, it's usually a recipe for disaster. And goes back to one of my favorite quotes. Expectations are just future resentments.
Mm. Yeah. And that second time you've got the carrot out there and it's like new and fresh and everything. Then you got to kind of get it back, right? It's like even to another level to get back to Kona the second time. And it's always these things, right? Like the dilemmas of like, what's the right choice? I I'm not a parent, but I think about it like, is it right to be hanging around your kid more, or do you want to let them be themselves more? All these like tough decisions that you face. And I think that translates into triathlon is like, do I, go further today just because I think, what I mean? It's like the decisions are, just do, control what you can control sometimes isn't the easiest decision to make, I guess. It's sort of like, I can control anything I want. I don't have to go work out today, but is that the best decision? Or is it like, I can stop here and stay ahead of the game? You control both, decisions. And sometimes it's not easy to figure out, I guess.
I like it. It's not easy to figure out. And there's your answer for today's Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast.
Do we want to leave?
We are the antithesis of all other triathlon
or an action plan.
Do this and do that, and I guarantee you, we will raise your FTP about 13.3 watts with these specifically fantastic workouts you do 9 times a week for 2 days. Anyway, we love you. And for all those of you who put in your comments under the frustration quote, I put in, we will get to those next week. It's a great topic because what we do is frustrating. The sport itself is frustrating at times because there's so many moving pieces and parts and disciplines, and you got nutrition and logistics and transitions and swim, bike, run and preparing. And, you can work out 8 hours, you can work out 15 hours, you can do 26-mile long runs, you can do 17. There's just a lot. There's a lot to cover. And there's a lot of great answers. We will get to those, but I thought this one today was a great one. And I think it was echoed a few and below that. So great question or comment, Dave. And frankly, it's just something we could all do better at is, being our biggest fan and shedding some of that shame and guilt. And I mean, I'll tell you this just as a human, that it's still something I struggle with, like no matter, how distant and far I get from, the worst days of my life, some days I still have that kind of, that echo in my ear of, you should feel guilty or shameful of, these things. And I have to quickly remind myself that that's not the case. It doesn't mean, I think we get in society and social media and the news especially is so, focused on holding people hostage with, I generally believe shaming people and making people feel guilty is the greatest weapon on this planet. It holds people back from more things than you could possibly imagine, because they feel like people who make mistakes or have these thoughts and feelings about themselves feel like they are supposed to feel ashamed and guilty. People use that as methods of control and you know what? Flip up those middle fingers and give a big fuck you to anybody that makes you feel like that and move on with your life and give yourself a break. You don't have to feel like that. But that's it. If you feel like it, and after you do that, go to our website, C26 Triathlon. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for a coach for this next year, click on our coaching tab, peruse the options that you have, and find one that fits you best. If you need anything from Mike specifically, you can always reach out to him. He's at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com. And while we don't have a donation button or charge for the podcast, if you want to support us, rep some gear. We have some awesome gear on our website. You can click on the gear tab. We got sweatshirts, we got t-shirts, we got long sleeve shirts, we got coffee mugs, some swim caps. We got all kinds of fun stuff. So go there and, if you want to support us, throw us a bone.
Flip the bird.
And flip the bird. Flip the bird. All right, dude.
All right, man. I'll catch you later. 2 seconds.